Shalom Aleichem, good morning. Bruchim Habayim. Shalom Aleichem to our viewers on Torah Anytime as well. I want to dedicate this shir for the Atzlacha of Ben Sion Ben Dosa, him and his family, in all their endeavors as well. To my dear friend, Rav Avraham Shmuel HaKohen, who's visiting us all the way from Teaneck, New Jersey, to visit his son, Akiva, Mitzvah Hashem. Should become a tremendous Talmid Chochem. That Klal Yisrael will go to him to seek his guidance, brachos, Mitzvah Hashem, and his father and family will see tremendous nachas de kedusha. You don't have to go back to Chutz La'aretz, you know. We welcome you every week, Mitzvah Hashem. You can stay here. We're starting with a riddle in Yana de Yoima. We are in the month of Kislev. This is a 2-point question. Which halacha in Shulchan Aruch? You have 4 halakim of Shulchan Aruch. Which halacha in Shulchan Aruch starts only from Beis Kislev? Anu halacha. Only applicable from the 2nd of Kislev going forward. Doesn't apply before. Can it be? Not everybody together? One by one? Zayin. Zayin Cheshvan we start, right? 30 days. So is it Zayin Kislev? Why base? Yashan? In Kislev? Yashen or Yashan? The answer is, or Shulchan Aruch or Achaim Simen Taf Kuf Ayin Hey Seif Beis we learn. If Rosh Chodesh Kislev came and there's still no rain, Beis Din decree fasts on the tzibur Monday, Thursday, Monday. But in Shulchan Aruch twice in Simen Taf Yud Ches Seif Beis and in Taf Kuf Ayin Beis Seif Beis we learn that you don't decree a tainis on a Rosh Chodesh. So if it's from Rosh Chodesh but you can actually fast on Rosh Chodesh, is the first time this can be applicable? Beis Kislev. That's the answer to a question, and nobody gets any points, but maybe later on you'll get the points. We'll see, I'm not sure.
There's a rollover to the next one?
The points? I don't know what you're going to do with the points, but yes, it can roll over. Yeah, but if you get it wrong, I take away those 4 points. So now we dive into Parshas Vayetze. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana. Can you make this pasuk shorter? Sure.
Good, Yaakov.
Vayelech Yaakov Harana. You just took 3 words off. So are they superfluous? Who's bothered by this? Rashi. What does Rashi explain? Melamed sheyetzias tzaddik min ha'ir oisar roisha. It makes an impression when the tzaddik leaves town, because he is the glory, he is the splendor of the city. When he leaves, the glory and its splendor leaves as well. Were there other tzaddikim before Yaakov Avinu who also left their cities? Yes, their name is Avraham, their name is Yitzchak. Lech lecha me'artzecha. Can't you say Vayetze Avraham me'artzo? By Yitzchak Avinu it says, when he left Gerar, Vayelech Misham. But if the word Yetzia, Vayetze, denotes that Roishem is left, why can't you say about Yitzchak or Avraham, Vayetze? So Rashi says, this comes to teach us that Pana Ziva, Pana Hoida, Pana Hadara, just like Noemi when she left, the glory of town left as well. Noemi and Ruth leave, but Avraham and Yitzchak are not as tzaddikim as Noemi and Ruth, or as Yaakov. Why Dafka by Yaakov Avinu? Then it says this idea, Yetzias HaTzadik min ha'ir, makes an impression. So the Kli Yakar offers 2 terutzim, exactly the opposite one of each other. In his first terutz, the Kli Yakar explains, when Avraham and Yitzchak left their town, they left, but no one else was left. No other tzaddikim. There were no other tzaddikim. So when they leave, obviously is going to leave an impression because there are no tzaddikim. The chiddush here is that when Yaakov Avinu leaves, Yitzchak still remains in town, and yet a tzaddik leaves, even though there are the tzaddikim left. A tzaddik leaves, it leaves, makes an impression. The other terut that the Kli Yakar says exactly the opposite. One happened when Avraham and Yitzchak left. They left, and along they took with them their whole mishpacha. Everybody. Who's left? All the Reshaim. You think the Reshaim are devastated? The tzaddik left town. It's like, oh, finally, we got rid of this Frumi guy. It's annoying us all day long. He's sitting and learning and rebuking us. They were very happy. So obviously it didn't make any impression. Only when Yaakov Avinu left, and Rivka and Yitzchak are still there, then it makes an impression. And those are the two terutzim of the Kli Yaakov, but the Keren LaDavid, he says differently. There are all kinds of tzaddikim. There's a tzaddik who's involved in Kiruf. All day long he goes and he talks to people and tries to be mekar of them, and he's involved with the tzibur. There's another tzaddik. The tzaddik who sits in his Daled Amos, he can sit in Bnei Brak in 23 Rashbam Street, nobody knows him. Ultimately the whole world would know him. But it's as if he has no interaction with the tzibur. So he would think that the first type of tzaddik who's very involved with the tzibur, when he leaves, it makes an impression. Everybody cries, oh, we lost the tzaddik. The other type of tzaddik, what do we have to do with him? He just sits and learns by himself. It doesn't make an impression when he leaves. The Chiddush is Yaakov Avinu wasn't like Avraham and Yitzchak initially. The time that Yitzchak was around, Yaakov was sitting in Beis Medrash. He didn't have too many interactions with the tzibur, and yet the Chiddush is, even when a tzaddik like that leaves town, it makes an impression, and that's the Chiddush of Yaakov Avinu. That's why it says Dafka by him. When Avraham and Yitzchak left town, obviously it would make an impression because people knew them. They were involved with the tzibur, but Yaakov wasn't, and that's the Chiddush of Yaakov Avinu. When Yaakov Avinu goes to sleep in Beis El, the pasuk says, Vayishkav b'makom hahu. So Rashi explains, b'makom hahu is Lashon Miut. Finally now he's going to sleep after 14 years that he didn't. Is it shayach to say he didn't go to sleep for 14 years? Asks Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. We have a rule. In Sukkah Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, Chazal say, if somebody says, Shvua, I'm taking a Shvua, that I'm not going to sleep for a week, what do we do to him? We give him Malkos and we say, here's the bed, go to sleep right now. Because it's not shayach for a person to live more than 3 days without going to sleep. So how can you say that Yaakov Avinu didn't sleep for 14 days? 14 years, I'm sorry. How is it possible?
In the bed. In the bed.
So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says, not in the bed. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says, Yaakov Avinu never went to sleep. He never put his pajamas on. Yes, of course he fell asleep, but he didn't go to sleep. He was learning and learning and learning and felt his eyes become very, very heavy, and he fell asleep. But the Chiddush was, tonight he is going to sleep. Vayishkav b'makom hahu, as opposed to 14 years that he fell asleep. My Rebbe, Rebbe Usher Weiss, told me that his Rebbe, the Kloisenberger Rebbe Zatzal, never said Kriyas Shema al Amita. Never said Kriyas Shema. Bedtime Kriyas Shema, because he never went to sleep. He fell asleep every single night when he's learning, but he never went to sleep. He really didn't have a chance to say Kriyas Shema al Amita. L'choira, there is a stira in the Rambam. The Rambam Milchos Deos, Perek Daled Halacha Daled says, Dai lo la'adam sheyishan 8 sha'os me'es le'es. It's sufficient for a person to sleep 8 hours. One needs 8 hours a night, and people who love sleeping love to quote this Rambam. It's great. Who gets 8 hours today? I don't know. 8 hours, it's clear that you need 8 hours within 24-hour period, right? However, the same Rambam, but in Hilchos Talmud Torah, totally different style, Perek Gimel Halacha Yud Gimel, and there he says, En Adam Lamed Rov Chochmasoi Ela Balayla. Most of his wisdom one acquires from what he learns at night. And the Rambam continues and says, one who wants to acquire the crown of Torah should not waste even one of his nights on eating, sleeping, and other matters, not even one of his nights, because that's when you really acquire your wisdom. And one who learns at night, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Moishech alav chut shel chesed bayom, quotes the Gemara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu draws on him chut shel chesed. That's when it all happens, at night. So if you want me to sleep 8 hours at night, how exactly am I supposed to earn and acquire the crown of Torah if I'm supposed to sleep, just to be learning, and not to sleep even one night? How does it work? It's a contradiction in the Rambam. So we must say, Hilchos Deos is talking to the rest of the world, to the entire world, to regular, normal people. But to Talmidei Chachamim, who want to acquire the crown of Torah, the Rambam is speaking to them in Hilchos Talmud Torah. And if one who wants to acquire the crown, it's up there, up for grabs. Everyone who wants can go and attain that crown. With that, maybe we can understand the Gemara. Machloikes in the Gemara, Eruvin Samechei Amud Beis, Machloikes Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Yehuda says, Lo ibra leila ela lesheita. Why was the night created? It's for you to go to sleep. That's why the night was created. Reb Shimon ben Lakish says, no. The night was created legirsa, for sitting and learning. So what is it? We have a rule. In Divrei Agada, there is no Machloikes. In divrei halacha, there could be many machlokes. You say tameh and I say tahor, pasul, kosher, treif. There is a halacha, and we know there's only one opinion that lemaise we decree, and that's how we rule. But divrei agada, the Michtav Meliyahu says there is no machlokes. Chelek Gimel, page 353, I think. Chelek Beis, page 176. Some say, to explain that, but it says many times in the Gemara, you hear one opinion, and then it says, man amar like this, upliga. Man amar like this, upliga. Pliga means they're disputing, they're have a machlokes. No, pliga is also from palga, half. This one says this opinion, and it's half. And this one says the other opinion, and it's half. And they're both complete each other. The most perfect example to that is in Megillah Tes Vav Amud Beis, where the Gemara asks about Esther Amalka. What was she thinking? Inviting Haman to the Mishnah she's going to make with Achashverosh, speaking all about Haman. Haman can defend himself. Haman can say to Achashverosh, she's lying. Why invite him if you want to speak about him? And the Amoraim there, Tanaim and Amoraim give 10 different reasons why Esther did what she did. At the end, the Gemara says, Eliyahu Hanavi came and he said, you're right, and you're right, and you're right, and you're right. They were all right. So there's no machlokes, the different angles that complete each other. Already in the Zohar Kodesh, in the Tikkunim, in Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, it says, Kulhu Kshoit. All these matters, when it comes to Divrei Agada, there is no machlokes, it's all emes. But here in this machlokes, seemingly, what is it? Was the night created for sleeping, or was the night created for girsa? What is it? Could be, based on what we said before. Rabbi Yehuda says the night was created for sleeping. Comes the Shlakish and says, I'll explain to you what the Rebbe just said. He meant sleeping, like Yaakov Avinu, sleeping that comes as a result of girsa. It's no machlokes. Night was created to sleep out of learning. Night was created to learn. But every so often you'll find yourself, your eyes are closing and you fall asleep. For that type of sleep, that's what Rabbi Yehuda was saying, night was created. Or the reverse. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, night was created for girsa, for learning. Comes Rabbi Yehuda says, I'll tell you what the Rebbe was talking about. What was he saying? The Rabbi ben Ilchos Deos, Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel, says that if you go to sleep, not because you're tired, because you want to have koyach to learn tomorrow. If you go eat, not because you're hungry, because you want to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with more koyach. You'll be more concentrated when you're eating well, when you're sleeping well. So that sleeping becomes a chelek of your avodas Hashem. It's part of your Talmud Torah. Says the Shlakish, the night was created for girsa. Says the Rebbe, I'll explain to you how you go to sleep at night. If you go to sleep but you do l'shem shamayim, I'm doing it for the girsa of tomorrow, for the learning of tomorrow, mimele, when you're sleeping, it's part of your learning, and in Mele, it's different angles of the same idea, but there is no machlokes. So learning at night is not just a great idea because you can acquire the crown of Torah. It's the best investment. Because there is a Ben Ish Chai. In Shabbos Malketa, one of his many, many Sfarim, I think in Daf Reish Pei Vav, the Ben Ish Chai writes that one who learns at night can easily go to bed and say, listen to his Yetzer when the Yetzer says to him, listen, you don't have to learn now. Now is the time to sleep. You'll learn tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll have more koyach. And yet he goes and he learns at night when he doesn't really have to learn. He shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu that if it was up to him, instead of going to sleep, he would just continue learning. Ultimately, one has to go to sleep every so often, so he does. But if it was up to him, the lashon of the Ben Ish Chai is, this is a type of learning which is nedivus. He's doing something that he doesn't have to. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to him midah keneged midah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I see that if it was up to you, you wouldn't go into business. You wouldn't go to sleep. You would just continue learning because you learn it when you don't really have to. So you know what? When you do go to sleep, when you are involved in business, I'll consider that time as if you're sitting and learning. It comes out that one who learns at night is as if learning 24/7. The tremendous, tremendous investment. The Ben Ish Chai continues there and says that for the merit of learning at night, Geula comes. Why? He brings a pasuk from Eicha, Perek Beis Yutes, I think, when the pasuk says, Kumi, Roini, Balayla, Leroish Ashmurois. The Geula is a chesed. It's a chesed of Ribbon Shel Olam. So one who learns at night, which is in essence a chesed, you do extra measure what you don't really need to. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, for that chesed, I'll give you a chesed, midah keneged midah, and especially in this times, when you see in last month that there's a call to learn more at night because the soldiers are telling us that the main part of their fighting is at night, and we need the extra learning at night, this hopefully is a call to action.
What does it night mean? I mean, that's what any time says that
the Ben Ish Chai doesn't tell us. The Shla HaKodosh, Mishnah Berurah brings him at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch HaChaim, says there's a big inyan to be mechaber night and day. So when the day and night, when the day ends, it's a good time, it's a wonderful time, auspicious time to learn. And when the night ends and it connects to the morning, the dawn, it's a very good special time to connect them. It's important to connect them. In the middle, it's up to the person. The more the person learns. Today, I think 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, even though it's much after, Tzeis HaKochavim is not really considered night because the language of the Ben Ish Chai is that he learns at the time that he says, I should be in bed now. Who goes to bed at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock? L'choira, it's individual, it's subjective. The time that normally a person would go to bed and then he says, no, I'm going to sit and learn, that's when it goes into the nedivus part. Ben Ish Chai didn't say specific times, he didn't look at the clock.
The idea is to be up to net. When is that time? When is the learning time?
Easiest part, you get up before nets, and now 2-3 hours before, whatever you can, and you learn that's still considered nighttime, and you're up for the nets, you're also connecting night and day. You benefit from all worlds. So the best investment there is, we're not saying not to learn during the day, Khalila, is to add and to learn at night. But one who can't. Some people can't. He's working at night, he's a doctor. He needs to go to sleep. Some people do need to go to sleep, and he won't be able to function the following day. So the best investment will be, in that case, to support those who are learning at night. And when one does that, every minute, instead of his own learning at night, it's multiplied by the amount of people that he supported that are learning at night, and that's tremendous investment. But one who supports this and is funding all this Kolel Chatzois is a tremendous tzaddik, but he still has to remember what happened to me many times when I went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kodesh Livrocha. I went with great Gvirim. And I said, Rebbe, this guy, he supports the this and he supports the that, and this yeshiva. He wants the bracha, and Reb Chaim is not impressed, and he says, you learn? Some said no, some said, yeah. What are you learning? Sechta Shabbos. Can I test you? No. Reb Chaim says, Ze lo shaveh klum. You tell me he's spending millions of dollars if you don't know how to learn. If you don't learn, you don't try to find out what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. And his divine letter that he left us called the Torah, Ze lo shaveh klum. So the supporter of Torah also needs to dedicate the time that he does have to learn. Reb Chaim Volozhin, there's a sefer called Asufas Ma'arachois, and there he says, Reb Chaim Volozhin, a ma'aseh from Reb Chaim, that the Chafetz Chaim said. Reb Chaim Volozhin convinced a certain rich guy to support his yeshiva. And he did. And he had an agreement with him. He told him, I guess, apparently he was very old, and he said to him, when you leave this world, I'll learn Mishnayos for your schus. And that's what happened. After a while, this person departed, and Reb Chaim Volozhin immediately, on the week of Shiva already, started learning Mishnayos Taharos L'Zeicher, this guy. One day, Reb Chaim learns a certain Mishnah, and he gets stuck. He just can't figure it out. He has a tremendous kasha, he doesn't understand, and he fell asleep. And in his dream, this rich guy comes to him and explains to him the Mishnah in the clearest way, so perfect and sweet. Reb Chaim Volozhin woke up. He was shocked. And then he said, I knew that up there, those who support Torah will know how to learn. But that it comes so fast that I had no idea. That was within the week of Shiva. So, learning Torah at night, supporting Torah, whatever we can do to help the war effort, to help Klal Yisrael, but even more important, to help ourselves. Chayecha koidmi. So Chazal say that Yaakov Avinu hid for 14 years in the Beis Medrash of Shem Va'ever. Asks Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Who's he running from? Esav. Esav can't figure out that the first place to check for Yaakov Avinu is going to be not in the bar and not in the I don't know where. Go to check in the yeshiva. Where else will Yaakov Avinu be? Obviously he's going to be there. Why wasn't Yaakov Avinu worried that Esav is going to go check for him? He's going to look for him first place. He's going to be in Beis Medrash.
father died. He's not going to...
Yaakov Avinu knew that Esav is not stepping foot in the best medrash. There's so much sanctity there. There's so much tahara that Esav was worried, oh, if I come there, maybe one of the Rabbonim is going to sit me down and going to have a shmuz with me and they're going to try to be machzir me b'tshuva. Esav doesn't think for even 1 second, I'm not going into the shul. And therefore Yaakov was very protected there. He said, I'm good. 14 years, nobody's going to bother me there. And you know, if you think about it, so many machlokes would be avoided and eliminated if the other side would only come and sit with us in Beis HaMedrash. But they're afraid. They're afraid. The sanctity, the purity in Beis HaMedrash, it's for some reason frightens them and they don't step foot for some reason, and that's chaval. So you did so well before, and the riddle will ask you a new one. I don't know if it's going to be for 4 points, let you want it, but Yaakov Avinu goes to sleep on the ground. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Hey brings that the minhag is to do this on Tisha B'Av as well. Is there anyone in Chumash Bereshis, other than this story with Yaakov Avinu, that went to sleep on the ground?
Yeah.
For more than 14 years.
More than 14 years.
Yeah, the Meraglim.
Meraglim went to sleep on the ground?
They were sleeping in every year in the...
First of all, it's not Chumash Bereshis, as far as I recall. And second of all, it's only once a year, Tisha B'Av. Day after day after day after day. Can it be? Somebody else in Chumash Bereshis. You slept on the ground? 14 years? Where does it say that?
Until Noah's children came, they waited all the different, his generations, you know, Horesh, they didn't have furniture there.
Time of Avram Avinu, it says in the Medrash, was the first one that he had a carriage, a playpen for his baby. He's the first one to have it. But I'm assuming they did have a bed. Do you have a source that says that Avram Adam Rishon didn't have a bed? I'm assuming he did. If he didn't have the first day, within a few weeks, Mr. May created one. You had somebody in mind? Vayetze, anyone else?
Moving when it was doing teshuva of what happened with the Shemsi?
The pasuk of the Midrash says, Yashav besako uveta'anito. He was fasting, he was wearing a sackcloth, but doesn't say anything about his sleeping or non-sleeping. Doesn't say that, as far as I recall. The answer is, not in this story of Yaakov Avinu, but in a different story later on in the Chumash of Yaakov Avinu. When he refused to be consoled for 22 years, thinking that Yosef was dead, he went to sleep on the ground for 22 years, which is a pele. It comes out from this. How long did Yaakov Avinu live for? 147 years. More than a third of his life, he didn't go to bed. Why? Here we learn that 14 years he was in the best Madash of Shem Va'ever. He never went to sleep. He maybe fell asleep, but he didn't go to sleep in bed. 22 years we just said when he was mourning for Yosef. And Yaakov Avinu says about himself that for 20 years when he was the shepherd of the flock of Lavan, Vatidat Shnasi Me'enai, I didn't go to sleep because he was worried maybe somebody is going to steal Lavan's son. Mimele Yaakov Avinu didn't go to sleep. In Bereshis Rabbah, in the Medrash, in Parashat Sameches Os Yud Aleph, it says that every night he used to say Tehillim. When he was the shepherd of Lavan, he used to say Tehillim. There's a machlokes if he only said all the Shira Malos, the 15 Shira Malos, or he said the entire Sefer Tehillim. But he was busy. He didn't have time to go to sleep. So it comes out 14 plus 20 plus 22. 56 years of his life out of 147. That means more than a third of his life he didn't go to sleep in a bed. Chiddush. Who instituted Ma'ariv? Yaakov Avinu. Shneimar Vayifga b'makom brachos chava ve'en pgia ela loshon tefillah. And why now? Why now? You like davening? So daven before. He's kind of old at this point. He's more than 80 years old. Why daven now? Why institute the davening of Ma'ariv now? Says the Torah Chaim in Sanhedrin Tzadihei, Yaakov Avinu wanted to daven mincha like the Shulchan Aruch says, mincha ktana. 15 minutes before Shkia. But what happened that day? Kafsa lo derech. And what happened as a result? Sunset was much, much earlier than normal. He missed davening mincha. What do you do when you miss davening mincha? Not your fault, not intentionally, you daven too. You daven Ma'ariv, the first Ma'ariv, and then the second one you daven is Tashlumin. But there is no Ma'ariv. So Yaakov Avinu was forced to create a new davening called Ma'ariv in order to be able to do a tashlumin for Mincha. That's why Dafka now, that's what the Torah Chaim says in Sanhedrin Tzadi Hey Amud Beis. Look at the beauty of what Yiras Shamayim is. Yaakov Avinu gets to Haran and he starts saying, oh, maybe I passed over the place where my forefathers used to daven. It's not right. I should turn around. I should go back and daven there. So he does. And he goes to sleep, and in his dream he sees the ladder, and he sees a tremendous vision, and he sees the Havtacha v'Kodesh Baruch Hu Shmarticha, I will watch over you no matter what. Havtacha, for your descendants, I will give them the land, I will watch over you forever and ever. And he wakes up, what does he say? I didn't know that there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if you would, so what? And if you would have known, so what would you do differently? Says the Medrash, ve'ilu haya yodea, Yaakov Avinu would say, lo ha'isi shtoichev mipnei oinis hashena she'asur lishon bebate knesiyos. I would not chalila fall asleep, but I wouldn't go to sleep here. You're not allowed to sleep in a shul. This is like a shul. Says the Alter of Novardok. Look at this. Yaakov Avinu was pursued by his brother. He was left naked. Eliphaz came and took all his belongings. Ve'ani chashuv kemes, in the Dorim Samech Dalet. So he had nothing. He's pursued, and now finally he goes to sleep. And he hears this unbelievable divine promise for you and your descendants forever. He sees the dream of the ladder. He talks to Ribono Shel Olam. Any normal person waking up from this dream, what would he do? Wow! Elated! What is Yaakov? He says, oi, maybe I went to sleep. Oi, maybe I did something wrong. That's Yiras Shamayim. Instead of thinking about the unbelievable merits, apparently I'm a tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu just talked to me and gave me a bracha of shmira. No, but he is worried about maybe I did something wrong. Be'oines, I didn't even know, I wasn't aware that it's a shul. That's called Yiras Shamayim.
Usually you try to remember if you have a good dream.
Who says he didn't? But the first thing that bothered him was not dreaming of Tacha, Shmira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, maybe I did something wrong. If I would have known, Chalila, I would close my eyes in a holy place like this. Bereishis Rabbah, we just mentioned Parashat Samech Ches, Os Yud Aleph, the Medrash says, Mechlokes Reb Nechemya and Reb Yehuda, what exactly did he do every single night? Whether he said 15 prakim of Shir HaMalos, or he said the entire Tehillim. Great, that's what he did at night. Lichoyre, it's a problem. In Yom Ches Amud Beis, Kiddushin Pei Beis Amud Aleph, and in many places in Chazal, we learn that the Avos were Mekayim, the Torah, before it was given. That means not only the Oraises, also the Rabbanons, and also Minhagim, and Anhagos Toives, and Takanos, every single thing. I know a Sefer, Tu Chalokim, B'darkei Avos, that discusses this, hundreds of Shailas on the Avos. How exactly did they do things which Lichoira seem to contradict that statement? But in Vayetze, Siman Reish Lamed Ches, we learn, he brings from the Arizal, one should not read Mikra Balayla. You don't do Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum at night. You don't say Tehillim at night. Yaakov Avinu, you don't know this Vayetze? You're the author of the Vayetze and the Arizal.
Zeman Sakana?
What's that?
Zeman Sakana, you can, no?
It's Me'oyer Ledin. What was Zman Sakana for 20 years as he's a shepherd? Not a Zman Sakana. It's not a Pikuach Nefesh. Time of war, you're allowed to. Zman Sakana, but it's not Zman Sakana. It's 20 years he's a shepherd. What was the Sakana? Lavan was a villain. What is this Sakana? He didn't come to him and threaten him with I'm going to shoot you with a gun every night. I don't know. Medrash Chazal says this.
There was no night and day for him.
Why is that?
Because he didn't sleep.
For him. But it doesn't change the metzius of the world. Right now, sunset. There's a moon out there. It's night. For most people, it's night. So for me, it's also night. The Vayetze doesn't say that if you don't sleep, you have a heter to read Mikra Balayla. It's not an individual thing. It's not subjective. So what was Yaakov Avinu thinking? Said Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal. Look in Brachos Daf Gimel. There it says that David HaMelech would learn Torah. Was asuk b'Torah ad chatzos. And then he would be oisek in shirim v'tishboichos. And then he would say chapters of Tehillim. So you have to assume that that's what Yaakov Avinu did. The Kaf HaChaim writes in Siman Reish Lamed Zayin Ois Tes that saying Tehillim as well. The minhag is to say it after chatzos. So when it says that Yaakov Avinu said it at night, that only probably means from chatzos and on. Or when you learn Tehillim with the Mefarshim, That's not called I'm saying Tehillim. I'm learning. Learning, you're allowed to learn. There's no problem. So Bimele, Yaakov Avinu was saying Tehillim, but he wasn't just saying Tehillim. He was learning Tehillim, and that's what's Meduyak, where it says over there in the Gemara in Brachos that David HaMelech was Oisek B'Torah. So for some, in fact, David HaMelech asked in the Medrash that my Tehillim should be like Negaim and Ohalos. If you say Tehillim in that way, you're allowed to say it at night as well.
You said that the Abbas kept all the halachas in a different way. But, so that means that Mary was being davened before Yaakov.
Of course. Of course. We asked last week or 2 weeks ago in Chayei Sarah, we asked about Yitzchak. Yitzchak instituted Mincha. So does that mean Avraham Avinu didn't daven Mincha? Avraham Avinu was Mekayim the whole Torah. How can you say he didn't daven Mincha? And the answer is, Yaakov Avinu instituted it for Klal Yisrael forever. Avraham Avinu was davening it before. And Avraham Avinu wasn't even the first one to daven Mincha. We brought from the Rema Mipano, Menachem Azariah Pano, that Adam HaRishon was the first one to daven Mincha. And not only did he daven Mincha Ktana, he davened Mincha Gedola as well. He davened 2 Minchas. That's why it's called Mincha Ktana and Mincha Gedola, because as soon as it was created, he looked out and he said, "Wow, look where I am!" Wow! And he said, "Thank you to Ribbon Shlorim." He davened Mincha with tremendous simcha in his heart. That's why it's called Mincha Gedola. A few hours later, he sinned, and then there was a totally different Mincha, a Mincha of Shivron Lev, where he had to say, "Kodesh Baruch Hu, forgive me." That's a Mincha Ktana. So he's the first one to daven Mincha, but he didn't institute it for Klal Yisrael. Yitzchak did. Yaakov did that with Ma'ariv for Klal Yisrael, but that doesn't mean that Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak didn't daven Ma'ariv before him. Yaakov Avinu asked the Kodesh Baruch Hu, "V'nasan li lechem le'echol ubeged lilboish." And we would think that lechem is lilbosh and beged is le'echol. Yaakov Avinu, we know that you request food in order to eat, and you request clothing in order to get. The pasuk itself says in Dvarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to the ger lechem vesimla. It doesn't say lechem le'echol vesimla lilbosh, because we understand that's what you do. More than that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Yaakov, ushmarticha, I will guard you, I will watch over you. So what do you think? He's going to keep you naked? He's going to keep you hungry? Why is he asking lechem le'echol and beged lilbosh? We wouldn't think that he was going to want a lechem lilbosh and beged le'echol. We find many answers. The Sefono says, I want to be able to eat the bread that Chalila, if I'm so poor, even though I have a avtacha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shmarticha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to watch over me, but if I'm so poor. So when a person is poor, he has a tremendous nisayon. And sometimes it's so difficult that his connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is severed somewhat. So Yaakov Avinu meant, I want the bread, I want to be able to eat it, so I'll be satiated, because if I'm so poor and I don't have what to wear, and I don't have food to eat, maybe Chalila, I'm not going to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shach says, Shach on the Torah, Siftei Kohen, that's from the disciples of the Arizal, Reb Mordechai Kohen of Tzfat, about 450 years ago, and he says, yes, you can have bread, sometimes you can have a lot of bread, but if you're sick, you don't have any appetite. You can have the finest clothing there is, but if you're sick, they're in the closet and you're wearing pajamas. If you're in the hospital, you're not wearing your clothing. So Yaakov Avinu asks, I want bread, but I won't be able to use it. I want clothing, I want to be able to use it as well. Or he says, I want bread and I want clothing to give to others. Because that Yaakov Avinu was all about tzedakah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about Avraham Avinu, Ki yadativ, I love Avraham. Why? Le'ma'an asher yetzav et banav ezbeiso acha v'shamu derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat. They do tzedakah in this household. So Yaakov Avinu said, I'm not worried about myself. You think I'm worried about food? You think I'm worried about clothing? I want to have food and clothing enough to support others. The Baal HaTurim says, the kavana of Yaakov Avinu, when he said food and clothing, he meant, I want to have the kehuna, which is in essence the bechoira, the firstborn's rights, that I got from Esav. Based on that, what Yaakov Avinu was saying, I want bread. What type of food was he asking for? To eat from the menachos of Beis HaMikdash. What kind of clothing? Big day kehuna. I don't need my regular suit. I want the big day kehuna. That's what he was requesting. The Radak, Rabbeinu Bechaye, Rabbeinu Avraham, the son of the Rambam. They all say, and others say as well, what Yaakov Avinu was actually requesting here, that he should have the midah of histapkus. Bimistapek bemuat. I can ask Allah for a lot of food, but I wouldn't be happy with even when I'm stuck only with bread, only with a shirt and pants to wear, that's it, and I don't need more than that. The Chafetz Chaim, in a few of his Sfarim, the Bir Halacha, a kuntres called Sfas Tamim, in his Sefer Shem Oila, keeps talking about this point, that a person should not ask for more than what he really needs. And in Bir Halacha, in Siman Tav Kuf Chavtes, he says that don't skimp on your expenses for Yontif, but anywhere else you should. Why? Because in the Gemara in Vayetze Daf Tes Vav Amud Beis Tes Vayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, "Kol mezonoisav shel Adam ktsuvim loy mi Rosh Hashanah ve'ad Rosh Hashanah." A person's income is decreed on Rosh Hashanah. But if you go crazy and you start spending more than what was allocated for you, you're not going to get extra. And then in Bir Halacha, the Chafetz Chaim says, so where does it stem from? Are there any women in the women's section? I hope not. I don't know if there's any women listening to us, because he says it all because of the women. I'm just quoting you the Bir Halacha. The Bir Halacha says because they want to buy this and we want to buy this, and the Bir Halacha says praiseworthy is the person who knows how to calculate what he has and doesn't spend more than that. But that's not the only reason, because he continues talking about it in other of his Sfarim, and in other of his Sfarim, in Sfas Tamim, Perek Hey in Sfas Tamim, he writes that the reason is because of the men. Already men in the men's section. Women, listen. Because of the men, because we want to keep up with the Joneses, because we want to impress others, because I want to be like this. You saw the fancy chasana that this guy made. You saw the car that he's driving. And because when people want to keep up with the others, if trying to impress others, they spend more than what they have. And he says that this causes a person to steal, and a person to come to embarrassment, and a person to become poor. In Shem Olam he writes that because of the desire for kavod, people will see me that I have this and this and that, and then they'll respect me. So his main reason to be against it was, when you want all this luxury, you need money. And in order to attain this money, you need to spend more time working. And when you spend more time, it comes on the cheshbon of learning Torah. That's why the Chafetz Chaim was bothered by the pursuit of what he calls luxus, moitaros, luxury, things that people don't need when they can be mistapik b'muat. In fact, once he went to visit one of his grandsons, and he saw beautiful curtains on the window, and the Chafetz Chaim says, wow, I see pages of Gemara covering the window. He refused to go into that house for another year. For a full year he didn't step foot in that house. Sometime, in a different time he went to somebody's house, and there were carpets on the floor, and he says, wow, I feel like I'm stepping on pages of Gemara. That's how Chafetz Chaim felt about what he felt is running after superfluous things that people do not need. So those are a few reasons why Yaakov Avinu was asking for lechem le'echol ubeged lilbosh and nothing else more than that. But perhaps the best answer, b'derech tzachus, Rabbi say b'derech tzachus, but some explain. Sometimes you eat the food, you eat, and then your clothes don't fit anymore. So Yaakov Avinu was asking, I want beged, I want lechem le'echol. I want to be able to eat my bread. But the beged that I bought last week should still fit this week. That's Mistama is the most accurate answer. Why? Well, you think he cared that he's going to be heavy? Because if he's heavy, he's going to slow down his observance and his zrizus to do mitzvahs. Because the Ochos Tzadikim writes that Tzadikim kol ma'aseihim b'zrizus. He's not be able to run to shul as fast as he did yesterday if he's heavier today. Mistama, that's the reason he was asking for this request.
What would the Chafetz Chaim say about the minhag in Israel today, like that people aspire especially to buy apartments with their daughters and they go off around America collecting and all that kind of thing? Surely that takes a lot of time away from the time you could spend on learning. You could somehow be content with less.
So maybe he would say to the rich guys in the States that they're going to collect from, don't have the guys from Israel go, send them the check so they can be able to sit and learn without wasting time. Or maybe he would say something different. Chazal say, Ishana, kelim naim, dirana, marchivin daito shel adam. So the nicer the apartment, it broadens your mind, you'll be able to learn more Torah. Why? Why is it important here in Eretz Yisrael? You're asking about Eretz Yisrael. Because here it's Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So if you increase the size of your apartment or beautify it, it's a hidur mitzvah on the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So I'm not sure.
People take them debt, don't they? Go from Gemach to Gemach, and then many years after, he troubled himself about paying off those
Right.
debts.
So tell the Gvirim in the States to send the checks without delaying, so they don't have to waste time. Where did Yaakov Avinu choose to live for 20 years? In whose house?
House of Laban.
House of Lavan. Who gave him permission? Is one allowed to live in the house of his father-in-law?
Maybe because he
Is one allowed to live in the house of his father-in-law?
who says not?
Who says not? A Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Same Gemara in Kiddushin Tzadi Ches Amud Beis in Baba Basra. Paskin La Halacha in the Rambam. Isurei Bia Perek Chaf Aleph Halacha Tetvav. I'll read to you the language of the Rambam. V'chen asru chachamim. Chachamim aserd al ha'ish sheyadur bebeis chamiv shezu azus panim hi. It's brazen. It's chutzpah. Why? We're afraid. You're going to be with your mother-in-law on a regular basis. Who knows? Who knows? Who gave Yaakov permission? We thought that he kept the whole Torah before. Do I send the Rabbanu?
He didn't have a mother-in-law.
Oh! That's one answer. We said before that Rachel ran to tell her father. Rashi says on the spot, why her father? Normally, girls run to their mothers. Lavan lost his wife. Rachel lost her mother. If the reason for the takana is batal, the takana is batal, even though he may have had other women, but since the mother-in-law loves her son-in-law, it's not shaykh here because these other women are not nothing to do with him. That's one answer. The Toysus already answered this question in Maseches Kiddushin Daf Yud Beis, and they say, but you see a lot of guys get married and they do live with their father-in-law. Says the Toysus because it's clear that they're doing it to save money because nobody's charging them rent, and it's not for their mother-in-law or other favors that one is doing for them. That's the language of the Toysus and Kiddushin that will apply to Yaakov Avinu. And the Shal Shuvas Ra'anach, also from the Rishonim in Siman Tzadi Aleph, says the same. Others say, today we rely on the Svara of the Ravid. The Ravid says that if Yiched lo bayis lemishkav, muta. If you have a specific place allocated for you in that house, or right outside the house, that your father-in-law lets you sleep there, mimele it's muta, mistama Yaakov Avinu had that as well.
When
Kiddushin Yud Beis Amud Beis, and Ba'abasa Tzadi Ches Amud Beis as well. And we don't have to go there. We said before the answer. Yaakov Avinu testified about himself. Ha'ishi bayom achalani choyrev vekerach balayla vatidad shnasi me'eina. Yaakov Avinu says I was never home. I never went to sleep. I was in the field all day long watching Lavan's flock. It's not shaykh. He was always worried what's going to happen. Somebody's going to come and steal from Lavan. He was always there. He was never in his house. He would be allowed because the reason for the Isur is no longer there. The Isur is no longer there as well.
He also went with his wife, so he should have come at some point.
So maybe their tents were far away from Lavan's house, and they made it smuta. We know we had 4 tents.
That's what I'm saying. The puzzle describes that he comes home and then he goes out to greet him.
Right, but he doesn't live there. He stayed there for a short while. He doesn't live there. If he doesn't live there, we made it to be muta. Many children are born in Pashas Vayetze. Normally, pregnancy is how long?
9 months.
Shenema, how do you know? Who told you? And don't tell me here, I saw my wife. That's not a raya. It's a Gemara Meforeshes in Nida Dafla Medches that herayon, v'nasati la herayon, the pasuk says herayon is how many days in Gematria? What's herayon in Gematria? 271 is 9 months. It's a Gemara Meforeshes. That's the reason we know women are pregnant 9 months, not because we look at them. Was there anyone pregnant for longer than 9 months in Chumash Bereshis? Can there be such a thing? Sarah, how long?
1 year.
1 year. Who told you? Next year I'm coming back. So that means in 3 months from now she's going to get pregnant. Kayet Chaya, in 1 year from now she's going to deliver. After 3 months from now she's going to be pregnant, which means in 9 months later, a year from today, she's going to give birth. Who said she was pregnant for more than 9 months? And more than a year. Much more than a year. Who?
So Bereshit only?
In Chumash Bereshis. You know somewhere else?
No, I mean there was the shorter pregnancy in Mitzrayim. When they
I'm not looking for a shorter. That's every single day they gave birth. I'm looking for a longer pregnancy. More than 9 months. The answer is Rochel Emenu. She gave birth to Binyamin. She was pregnant for 18 months. How do I know? Zohar HaKodesh says, Vayi ka'asher yalda Rachel es Yosef, and this pasuk says, the Zohar, that she became pregnant when she was still in the house of Lavan. I don't know if it's the day before they were leaving, or maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't know. But Yaakov delayed, and he was on traveling for 18 months. And when he left Sukkos, that's when Binyamin was born. So at least, again, I don't know when she was pregnant in the house of Lavan, but let's say it was just the day that they left, that's when she became pregnant, so at least 18 months. It could be more, but that's the answer.
I have another source for the 9 months. There's once was a Goya Achad in Amoraim, how did it take for a snake to have a gestation period? He told him 7 years. So he learned it because the curse on the small animal 52 days,
Right.
9 times 7 times 7.
Right, all right, very good. Can it be? Again, you did so good on the riddles today. Mamish Gevaldik. So, yeah, a bonus. Can it be a word in a parsha, somewhere, in the Torah? You know what, now we're down to Chumash Bereshis. One word that has 8 different meanings in one parsha? Bichlal, to find a word that has 8 different meanings is hard. But 8 different meanings in one parsha. Maybe in Parashat Vayetze. Let's see. Yaakov turns to the shepherds and he says to them, Vayomer lehem Yaakov, Achai, me'ayin atem. Where are you guys from? Achai, my brothers. The Radak says that's how a person turns to the ones whom he loves or to his neighbors. Achai means not brothers, it just means your friends, your neighbors. Yaakov sees Rachel and he turns and he says, Bas Lavan achi imoy, the brother of my mother. That's kipshutoy. A brother, ach is a brother. Vayagid Yaakov le Rachel, he told Rachel, Ki achi aviha hu. Rashi says, I am the brother of Lavan. Excuse me, no, you're not. I am a brother of him in what? Beramos. With a villain, be villain-like. So that's a totally different meaning, and that's the third interpretation. The fourth, Vayomer Yaakov le Lavan, Hachi achi ata? You are like my brother. You're important to me like my brother. Fourth interpretation. Fifth and sixth, Lavan took along with him Es Echav Imoy. He took his brothers along. Rashi says, not brothers, Kroivav, he took his relatives. But in Toisvas HaShalem it says, Es Echav means his dogs. I don't know why. For whatever reason, Lavan decided to call his dogs my relatives, my close family. I don't know. That's the type of mishpacha that he had. So that's already the fifth and the sixth interpretation what Echav really means. The seventh pasuk is Sim ko neged achai ve'achecha ve'yochichu ben sheneinu. The Radak says the brothers here of Yaakov are the shepherds and other people that were with him. And the eighth is Vayomer Yaakov le'echav liktu avonim. Yaakov says to his brothers, what brothers? Rashi says, Achav hem banav. He's talking about his sons. Medu sechel tov. Echav are the shvatim, so it's the same thing. So Echav for some reason changed into banav. So we had 8 different interpretations to one word. Another riddle. What was Yosef's name when he was inside his mother's womb? He's still in Rachel. He has a different name. What was it? Dina. That's not Yosef, that's Dina. What was Yosef's name? What you're telling us is a Gemara in Samech Amud Beis and Bochos. Rashi brings it on the spot. When Leah saw that she's pregnant, she says, uh-oh, wait a second, I already have 6 boys. The Shfachos have 2 each, that's 10. I know there's ultimately only going to be 12 tribes, so if I'm going to have another boy, Rachel is not even going to be like one of the Shfachos. So she davened. And there was a miracle. What was the miracle? The boy that she did have turned into a girl. That's Pashtus understanding of Rashi and the Gemara in Brachos. But the Maharsha, over in Nida, the Flamet Aluf Amud Aleph says, the girl didn't transform into a boy. The boy that she had was actually switched and was taken and thrown into Rachel's womb. And Rachel was pregnant with a girl, and she was switched and she was sent into Leah's womb. That's what the Targum Yonis Ben Uziel says as well, like the Maharsha. So it comes out, Leah was pregnant with a kid, with a boy, Yosef. His name was Yehosef. He had an extra hay. The Chassam Sofer, in Oiros Chassam Sofer, brings from a sefer called Tiv Gitin, in the name of a Mekubal, he doesn't tell us who it was, that this was the name of Yosef before he was born, is Yehosef, and he suggests, the Chassam Sofer, that Dina's real name was Din, strict judgment. But when Yosef is born, they take off the hay from Yehosef and he turns into Yosef, and Din becomes Dina, and now Dina, so you're very close, you get 1 point. Din becomes Dina, Yehosef becomes Yosef. Since we're on the subject of kids, naming kids, the pasuk says, "Ve'inei malachi Elokim oilim ve'yordim boy."
Leah prayed, but she didn't. Maybe Rachel had her first boy there, so that cheshbon of switching would not have worked.
She didn't pray to switch. She prayed that this will not be a boy, and it worked. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided how to do it, but she didn't know what was going on with Rachel. That's not her business.
You know the Avoy and the mothers also kept the Torah.
Absolutely.
So you're not allowed to daven about the sex of the baby after 40 days.
After 40 days.
What?
After 40 days. Who told you this was done after 40 days? Maybe it's within the first 40 days. You think Leah didn't know this Gemara Meforeshes?
Where do we get those names from? Yehosef and Din? Where is that written?
The Chassam Sofer brings it from the name of a sefer called Tiv Gitin in a name of a Mekubal. That's what it says over there. It's a Chassam Sofer. So the pasuk discusses malachim in our parasha. Hinei malachi Elokim oilim ve'yordim boy, and we have all kinds of children are born. Can one name his baby for a malach? Can you use names of malachim for your children?
We see that people do.
We see a lot of things that people do. We're not sure that it's okay. What's that? Ma'asim shebechol yom. All the ma'asim shebechol yom are always okay. Let's see. There's the Ramban. In Bereshis Lamed Gimel Pasuk Rav, the Ramban says on the Pasuk, Vayikra lo kel Eloike Yisrael. Says the Ramban, Veda, and you should know, Ki haminag hazeh beYisrael ken, it's a minhag in Klal Yisrael. The people call names for baby, Beshivchei hakel, praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he gives examples, like Tzuriel, Tzuri Shaddai, that the person says, Hashem is my rock. Tzuriel, Tzuri, Kel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is my rock. Tzuri Shaddai, the same thing. And he continues and he says, V'chen ya'asu b'shemos malachim. And that's what people do, using names of malachim. That, for example, people call, and he brings this as examples, Gavriel and Michael, to say that the gvura, the koyach that they have, is only from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why the last part of the word is kel, aleph, and lamed. To tell you all the malachim, there's no independent koyach that they have, it's all attributed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how many names of malachim do we know? Anyone? Throw a number. You're going to go with 5-6 names that you know. Maybe a bigger number than that? 70. In the Sefer Koyei Bishmoy, he brings from the Perush Alei Tamar and the Yerushalmi, that the names of Malachim mentioned in Divrei Chazal, in the Agada, is 315 different names. There's a Sefer called Malachi Elyon. Rabbi Reuven Margalios gathered all these 350 names, but the Malachim themselves don't think that it's limited. There are only 325 Malachim up there, because the Psukim say about the Malachim, Elef alafin yeshamshunei, hayesh mispar ligduda, and Pasuk in Eov, there's many more Malachim, but we're familiar with 325 names.
You see that there's like a purpose, like the name is well, connected to the mission, like there was a mission to do, so there was a name for the mission, so it's not really relevant, the name.
But it discusses the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For example, Gavriel, the Gevura comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In Yerushalmi, only Gavriel and Michael are mentioned. In Bavli, we see the Malach Matat, Mem Tetet, Reish, Vav, and Nun. And in Psachim Kuf Yud Ches, we learn about the Malach who's in charge of Hail, and his name is Yur Kami, Yud Vav Reish Kuf Mem Yud. Sefer Hasidim says, so why isn't it that the names of angels were revealed to us? Chiddush, Sefer Hasidim says, because they were afraid people are going to start bowing down to Malachim and make them into gods. Sefer Sha'arei Mitzvos, that's Reb Chaim Vital, he brings from his Rebbe, the Arizal, that he was choishesh to mention names of malachim, and when in the middle of a drasha, in the middle of a shir, he would discuss a malach, he would say mem, tet, and reish, and vav and nun. He would break it down into letters. He wouldn't say the name, except for names which are commonly used, like people use the names of Michael and Gabriel. So
they say Srafim. Srafim refers to angels. No?
Yeah, it's a different group of angels. Safim, Ve'oifanim, Bechayos HaKodesh, there's all kinds of type of groups of malachim there. In fact, one of the malachim that we mentioned before, and that is the Matat, I believe, he is from the group of Srafim. So it comes out that the Arizal was mechalek between names which are common, that you can verbalize, and names which are not common. So some are afraid because of that, and they don't want to use names. And why is that? Sefer Zecher David brings a fantastic tam. I don't know what his source to say this is, but he says the reason is HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a deal with the angels that whenever you are called, you must come. So if a person calls his name, come here for a second, little, and he calls the name of Malach, and the Malach runs over because he thought they called him. He says, as if they called me in vain. It's dangerous for the father who called that Malach in vain, and he came here. There was no reason. The ticha that they caused the Malach, I don't know where the Zecher David got this from. David Batzi, one of the great Mekubalim in our generation, says there is no problem to use, whether names which are common, names that are not common. In Sefer Keser Shem Tov, he brings, one is allowed to use the names that are mentioned in the Ksuvim, for example, Raphael, Michael, Gabriel. Names which are not mentioned in the Ksuvim, one should not write. But he says you're allowed to use names of Malachi Malach like Nuriel, Uriel, Azriel, even though they're not mentioned in the Ksuvim, because people use them all the time and it's not a problem. Reb Chaim Kanievsky writes that naming kids for Malachim like Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, Azriel, Uriel, that's the minhag of Israel, of Klal Yisrael. And he says Azriel, I'm sorry, before I said Matat, it's Azriel who's actually from the group of the Srafim. He says it's a common name. It even is used in the Tosfos in 3 places in Shas. The Chido and Shema Gidorim discuss this as well. While we're on the topic of subject, Reb Chaim Kanievsky was asked, what about the name Rachel? Is it a problem to give a girl the name Rachel? Some people are worried because she was barren for many years and she died young. And Reb Chaim says there's no problem. A girl who's called Rachel does not have to change, doesn't have to add anything. It's a valid, 100% legitimate name. It's interesting that we find strange names that we wouldn't believe that appear in Chazal. In Yerushalmi and Brachos, in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, as well as in Megillah Perek Daled Halacha Hey, Rabbi Chanina bar Andrei. Today is a very, very goyish name. If that's not enough, Tosfos bring in Gitin Daf Ches Amud Aleph, it's from Yerushalmi, it appears a few times. Sha'al Rabbeinu Peter le Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbi Peter asked Rabbeinu Tam. Peter is a very surprising name because that's one of the 5 disciples of Yamach Shemo V'Zichro. Very, very surprising. What about the name Albert? Sounds pretty like a new name, right? Be surprised, but in Brachos Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis it appears in Tosfos Reb Moshe Albert, and that's a nickname for Avraham. Albert is a nickname for Avraham. Achidish. While we're on the topic of subjects, while we're on the topic of names, the early days of the Satmar didn't have money. Today, Baruch Hashem, I think it's okay. But in the early days, the Satmar Rebbe himself, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, used to go from door to door to collect. And he gets to this house in Borough Park and he knocks on the door. And the guy gives him $47. So he says to him, what's Pshat 47? He says, well, isn't your name Yoel? Yoel in Gematria is 47. But the Satmar was very sharp and honest, but he says to him, yeah, but my mother calls me Yoelish. Yoelish is a little more expensive. Okay, Rabbi Isa, we'll finish off. We are dealing with Yishmael. We have a rule. Leika midi de lo mizei be'oraisa. There's nothing that's not hinted to in the Torah. Halfach ba ve'halfach ba de kula ba. You know, it would be much easier for us to deal with Yishmael if they would be willing to sit and negotiate, to talk. But they don't want to talk. They want to die. Does it make sense that a guy explodes, kills others, he dies, and his mother goes to give candies to all her relatives and even to people she doesn't know? That doesn't make any sense. They don't want to talk. They just want to die. Where does it say that in the Torah? Avraham Avinu were already requesting for it. Pashas Lecha. Vayomer Avraham El HaElokim. Lu Yishmael Yichya Lefanecha. If only Ishmael will live before you. In other words, let him only want to live, because Ishmael apparently doesn't want to live. Ishmael wants to die. Amen Hashem. We're going to help him do that. Achenu kol beis Yisrael nesunim batzar ubashivya, oimdim ben bayam uben bayabasha, amakom yerachem aleihem, v'yotziim mitzar levacho me'afir le'oiro meshiabud legeula. Ashta ba'agalo v'zman kori v'noimar, Amen.